which disappeared 4 days ago, still hasn't been found, despite the area of the search being doubled. The plain fact is that no one has any idea where the aircraft and the 239 human beings on board are. Flying is such an intrinsic part of modern life that many of us try to prefer to ignore that nagging anxiety. How do I know that this thing I'm sitting inside won't just fall out of the sky? Simply not being in control is troubling enough, leaving aside the possibility that you might suddenly disappear without a trace. The writer Alain de Botton is here. You spent a long time, didn't you? The writer in residence at Heathrow,
right.
weren't you?
I spent a good month at Heathrow watching...
Long enough, I'd have said.
Absolutely.
Have you got any ideas as to why this is so troubling, this idea of a plane and all its passengers disappearing?
I think we're just recalibrating risk. We assume, largely because of our smartphones, that wherever we go, we're being watched by a satellite in the sky. That's actually not true. We're being flattered by our mobile technology. The Earth remains vast, there remain lots of mysteries, and what's happened to this plane is what happens in lots of areas of medical science and other areas of science where there are still mysteries. Not everything is answerable, not everything is under our control. It's a terribly, if you like, humiliating event for human beings who like to feel that they've now mastered the map, they know where stuff is, and we're sitting around going, you know, this is worse than the Marie Celeste. We can't even map our own world. I think we've just got overly high expectations. It's a lesson in hubris and humility, really.
How much do you think it's to do with the fact of flight?
Well, there's no doubt that flying remains imaginatively an extraordinary thing to do. You know, we are earthbound creatures. To take to the skies is a daunting, possibly hubristic thing to do, and all of us feel it. You know, why do people buy so much duty-free before flying? Why is there all the rigmarole? Why are all these shows on aeroplanes? It remains for humans a very daunting thing. We've erased a lot of the risk, but some of the risk still remains. We feel some of that risk just intuitively, and I think there's nothing more natural than the fear of flying. It's not warranted by accident statistics, but it is warranted by the sheer implausibility of being at 35,000 feet. So we feel an echo of that when we feel a bit anxious, trapped in one of those tubes.
The sheer peculiarity of a plane disappearing, though, that is really weird, isn't it?
The news wants answers immediately. So it hasn't disappeared, we just don't know the answer yet. There are lots of things to which we don't yet know the answer, and you know, because we're so telescoped in and we want answers to everything immediately, we think that a couple of days is a momentous amount of time. You know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when things disappeared, ships, planes, etc., one waited, and it might be a week. Now, in the grand scheme of things, that's not that long. It will show up. It's not disappeared from, you know, all traces of can't be gone. It will be found. It's just going to take longer than the news cycle. So I think it's just a measure of how much we generally know. We know a lot, and a lot of questions are answered for us on the hour. This one is going to take a lot longer to resolve, and that's deeply puzzling, but we need to be a bit more modest about our capacities.
It's also putting yourself in the hands of somebody else, isn't it? I mean, you're up there. Some people understand why a plane flies and some people don't, but the fact is, whether you understand it or not, you are not at the controls. Then you might disappear.
That's right, it's a massive surrender of your autonomy. The more, I found out, the more you know about flying, the scarier it gets. Because the less you know, you just think, well, those guys in the cockpit, it's all done by machines and it's all whatever. What you realise when you read pilots' forums, you talk to pilots, it's a heavy, sometimes physical business, landing a plane. You know, pilots will talk about a difficult landing. Now, that's a bit scary for a passenger because you think, oh, what about, you know, what's a very difficult landing? But it remains a challenging job. It's extraordinary that, you know, tonight in Western Europe, some 2,000 planes landed without incident at airports across the landmass. We don't give those a second thought. Very occasionally something like this goes wrong. You know, the stairs remain much riskier, the shower much more deadly than any Malaysian airliner. At the end of the day, this is a giant memento mori. You know, it's just reminding us life is brief. Life, you know, death can come very suddenly. You could die of a stroke, standing up out of the studio, etc. We don't expect it because we have such faith in our machines. Our machines do not guarantee us total immunity from death. It may come this evening. We need to be cautious, kind to one another while we're alive, and modest about our capacities.
Alain de Botton, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.